Charge up your sales with StorEdge. We're going to kick it off. We're going to cover a couple things: how to sell batteries, how to install StorEdge, with a little bit of a prize or a surprise in there for you, and then an intro to LG Chem. Joining me today, my name is Mike Roderson. I'm Director of Marketing for SolarEdge. I've also got Cameron here, Cameron Stewart. You probably know him.
How's it going, Mike?
From such films as How to Install SolarEdge, How to Do Rapid Shutdown with SolarEdge, and everything else SolarEdge. He's our energy storage apps engineer now, and he's our specialist there. I've also got Lynn Tran, sales manager for LG Chem.
Hi, Mike.
So it's going to be a full room today. We're going to kick it off with a trip back in time. We're going to go back to 1999. And do you remember where you are or were in 1999? I was in Germany, stationed out there, and I was getting VHS tapes sent to me from my cousin with episodes of Friends and Seinfeld on them. And I got a VHS tape because if you remember back then, DVDs weren't really that popular. At the same time, here in California, there was a little startup company, and they were getting into the business of mailing movies to people. They adopted a new format called DVDs because it was cheaper and more reliable. Of course, I'm talking about Netflix. Netflix started their business by mailing you a DVD. And then they went to an online streaming model. They started that domestically. They went international. They have a pretty big international streaming database. They're now in content development as well. This is a company that has pivoted multiple times and has been at the cutting edge of technology from its inception. If I gave you a quiz right now and you were to tell me what percentage of their revenue comes from mailing you a DVD, what would you think that would be? Would you think it would be that small? The red one here is domestic streaming. That's in the United States. The darker red one is international streaming. Mailing you a DVD only in the U.S. market, $100,000 in revenue. This is on a quarter, last quarter, where they got $3.3 billion in total revenue. 100,000 comes from business as usual, mailing you a DVD. This is a company that's been doing a very good job of pivoting their business when they had to. Here's another example of a company. This company used to make computers. They used to have Apple Computer was their name. They changed it to Apple. Take a wild guess how much of the revenue comes from computers. It's less than 10%. This is from their Q4 earnings. This is an $88 billion quarter for the company, less than 10% of it coming to you from selling computers. So these are companies that have done pivots on their products when the industry demanded it, when they saw changes in the industry. So why am I bringing this up? Well, we're at an inflection point in our industry as well. 2016, according to Green Tech Media, was the peak in residential installation volumes in terms of megawatts. The first decline was seen in 2017. We are seeing pretty much flat or less than 10% growth for 2018, 2019. So right off the bat, you've got 350,000 installations last year, this year, next year, and that number is not going up. How are you going to get the most from yours? How do you win in a flat market? Let's have a poll. We've given you a couple options here. How do you win in a flat market? Option A, hunker down. Option 2, lowest cost wins, race you to the bottom. Number 3, technology wins, best value for the customer. Number 4, marketing and brand wins. Number 5, you don't, no one wins. All right, so let me read off the results here. Hunker down, growth is for suckers, 2%, 1%. Lowest cost wins, 3%. So we've got a group that is strongly in favor of number 3. Technology wins, best value for the customer. We couldn't agree more. And number 2, marketing and brand wins. I like these results. You don't, no one wins. So that's a 3% on the you don't, no one wins. Technology wins, we agree. New technologies are emerging. What you're seeing here is a picture of the LG Chem Resu battery along with the StorEdge inverter. So this is one of the new technologies. This is obviously what we're going to be talking about today. StorEdge is a growing market. So in 2017, you can kind of see here with residential, non-residential utility, the whole market. Compare that to 2018 and the forecast for this year. You can see a huge increase versus in the standard PV market where we're not really seeing much growth at all. 19, 20, continuing to grow. So this is us kind of coupling our business to a faster moving horse. So solar is dead, long live solar. So a long running phrase, if you're from the UK, you know where that comes from. Solar 2.0 is here. 2018 is not a year of megawatt growth. Instead, if you're going to be successful, you need to focus your business on revenue and more specifically revenue per job. Obviously, with the battery system, if you're in the market, you know that these are going in for about $10,000 additional ASP. So how do you increase your revenue per job? Obviously, putting a battery in there solves that for you. Rates are changing, and not only the rate, the dollar amount or the cents you pay per kilowatt hour, but the way the rate works. So we're seeing more demand charges. Massachusetts just rolled something out in the last week or so. You've got California with time of use, Hawaii with zero export, and not only in Hawaii with zero export, now you've got some different rates that are being added on top of that. So this is what we call high bill blowback, is when the customer calls you about 2 years later, says the solar system's not doing what you said it would do. It's not saving me the money you said it would save me, and I'm mad. So that's high bill blowback. So we're looking at reducing that. When these rates dramatically change, and we see a battery is critical to helping insulate the customers and also your business from that. But that's why it's good. So how would you go about selling more? Well, there are two business models you can adopt. Solar is the product. So that this is kind of steady as she goes. Same thing we've been doing for the last couple of years. We go in and we talk to the customer about the benefits of solar, and we tell them, hey, solar is great. It's going to save you money. Oh, by the way, you can also have a battery. Wouldn't that be nice? So this is the way most of us are selling solar and batteries today. It's an upsell. Over 2017, we saw about a 5 to 10% adoption rate. There's a report that just came out from Energy Sage. It puts that number at 7%. So you can go download that report and look at it. This is even in a market with pretty good incentives, very good battery pricing. Thank you, LG, Kim, for that. And very good incentives like in California, for one, Hawaii and markets. So, we're seeing really slow adoption. 7% is not that aggressive. The other business model that you can do is battery integrated solar. So your product includes a battery. So now you go in, you install a solar system, it includes a battery already. That's what differentiates you, and that's what makes you different than other installers in your area. It's not an upsell. You're selling battery as core to the system. That approach is leading to almost a 50% adoption rate in the installers that are taking this on. So Q4, we saw a number of installers starting to do this, and even now in 2018, and about half of their systems are going in with a battery when they sell like this. So, right off the bat, you're probably thinking, I'm going to lose business. Isn't this more expensive? It's half of your systems that are going in like this. So you still have an option if the customer is extremely price sensitive to take the battery out and to go with a PV only. The difference in these two approaches, the difference between somebody getting 5% adoption rate and 50% adoption rate is what is the initial offering? Is the initial offering solar and then you come back later and say plus a battery, or is the initial offering solar plus battery and then you leave it up to the customer to take the battery out of the cell? So that's the difference in those two models. You might be a little bit uncomfortable with this type of a strategy, going into a homeowner telling them battery is the best thing for them. Batteries are part of our solution. It's core to our business. We think you need to have it. We get that. That was my initial reaction too. I don't know about you. I feel it right behind my right eye. There's a little bit of a pressure there when I feel uncomfortable like that. So this is what we had to do. We had to get out our pen and paper and run through some numbers. And what's critical to know is that today they're getting tomorrow's battery price, or you're getting tomorrow's battery price today. So if you look at ITC and you look at incentives, the cost in some markets is up to 50% off, and I'll show you those numbers in a minute.
In the ITC, at least what it looks like today, it has a limited duration, so you're not going to be able to rely on it forever.
So if you're getting the investment tax credit on your solar system, and then 3 years from now, you want to put in some batteries or something like that, you might not be able to get access to ITC. And these incentives, they tend to have limited budgets. So they're going to be good for about 2 or 3 years, but then those incentives dry out. And what's critical to think about is that when you look at ITC, you're getting ITC on the entire installation. So the battery is only a part of that. You've got a battery, you've got other balance of system components, you've got your labor that you'll be spending time and effort there and obviously charging for. So getting that ITC 30% on all of that, a lot of times is a bigger number than the entire cost of the battery. So if you're thinking the battery is going to come down by 50% and so I should wait, it's actually better to go ahead and do that today and to get tomorrow's price today. The other thing to think about is if you're there on site, you're very familiar, intimately familiar with the home electrical system. You're familiar with the main panel, you know what the ratings are, you know where the wires go, you know where the conduit goes. So it's going to be easier for you to bring the battery and do the installation as part of the solar system. It's going to be less expensive for you to do as part of that original PV than to do it 3 years from now. 3 years from now, you probably haven't talked to the customer in a while, you've got to send a new sales rep out there, you've got to send a new technical evaluation team out there, and you've got to send new installers out there. It's a couple of new truck rolls that are going to increase the cost for you to do a system in the future. So not only is it going to be more expensive from an incentive point of view, ITC point of view, but also just to do it as a separate job is going to add to the cost. So tomorrow's price today, that's a big feature that gets the guys who are seriously thinking about doing a battery in 3 to 5 years. Now you're going to be able to potentially rope them in to a day one installation. So obviously we're worried about competitive economics. You've got your bid, it's sitting next to 5 other bids, 3 other bids. This is my portal. I go into Energy Sage, I put in my home address in there. I get bids all the time. I like to keep my finger on the pulse of the industry to know what kind of pricing and what kind of array size I could be getting. So if you look at the red dot and the blue dot, those are the two that we're going to compare. The blue dot is a 6.4 kilowatt array, and they're charging me about $12,500 for it. The blue dot is a 5.5 kilowatt array. It's smaller, and they're charging me more. So I've got a $19,000 bid on that. So the blue dot column, you could call that like a premium solar offering. And about 15% of the market today will sell on a premium solar offering. You look at kind of the other bids, you can compare them as well. Imagine if you're in the red column and you're going to add a battery. So now for about $6,300, if we're in California, we're going to use that incentive to close the gap to that $10,000 point we talked about. We're going to price at the same level as the blue dot guy, and we're going to provide them backup power when the grid goes down and greater independence. So which one do you think the customer is going to go with? It gives us an opportunity to redefine what premium solar offerings mean. And premium now will mean with a battery. So you're going to go in there, you're going to say batteries are critical to a solar system. It's what we install. It's how it differentiates us. And we're going to match your bid with a battery, and you're not going to pay a penny more. That's a pretty powerful message to deliver at the kitchen table. So let's look at the numbers. $10,000, nice round figure. It's kind of in the middle of the ranges we're seeing. You can get financing for this. So we're working with a number of partners, Spruce Dividend, Sunlight Financial, Service Financial Company, LLC. These guys will finance battery installations. And when you finance a battery installation, you're not charging the customer $10,000, you're charging him a monthly fee. So we're going to look at what that monthly fee will be. Storage incentive, this is California, we're at step 3 right now, 35 cents a watt hour. So it's a pretty good incentive, about $3,200. It's use it or lose it because it has a budget. So if you come back 3 to 5 years later, there won't be an SGIP necessarily. You can't rely on it being around. ITC, you take on the remainder. So you take the SGIP out of the original cost. That's why it's $2,000, 30% off. So your total savings is half, so about 52%. And it tends to be use it or lose it type of incentives. But as I mentioned before, it's financed. So how long are you going to finance it for? How long are the payment terms? And here we're using 15 years, maybe it's 10, 12, whatever your finance agency is going to give you. So you're going to divide that out over a number of months. Cost per month, it's basically $26, $30 a month, or $1 a day. So right off the bat, you're going in there. Solar's part of your offering. That's the first thing. You're getting them tomorrow's price today with this 50% off, leveraging existing incentives. The third thing you're doing is redefining premium solar. So you're increasing your sale size, and all of this you're making available for something about $1. Maybe it's $2, but it's kind of in that $1 to $2 range. So what do they get for that? So this it comes from you. When you registered, you gave us information from the survey. Top reasons customers are considering storage. So this is information directly from that survey. 1,000 of you said it was for backup. So that was by far the number one choice. Time of use is about a third of that. And then demand charge, other, and zero export. So a little bit about backup and time of use. We'll focus on the top two. Backup support during a blackout. So the solar industry didn't really lead the charge in developing backup power. It was generator sales. So guys who sell generators are really good at conveying the value of power during a blackout. And this comes directly from one of their sales brochures. What they look at are the hidden costs of a blackout. So they look at things like your refrigerator goes out. Maybe it goes out for a week. So you have food loss. Maybe you have a refrigerator loss because of that. I had some meat in my freezer go bad. We had to throw the refrigerator away. It gets into the plastics. It's hard to remove. My refrigerator wasn't $13,000, so I didn't sweat it too much. Power the lights, phone chargers, entertainment, and space heater. So why is that important? That's important because that avoids a hotel fee. So if you don't have the basic creature comforts of home, you tend to go and spend time in a hotel. If you're on the East Coast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was power out on the East Coast for a very long time after the hurricanes came in, weeks in some cases, and people were out of their homes and staying in hotels or staying with family. Powering sump pumps, and I would say powering charging power tools in general. This is home repair. So why did the power go out? You know, a lot of times it's like what our picture shows. It's a storm and something happened and there are tree branches down and there's flooding. So the ability to repair your home quickly prevents long-term damage. It's a stitch in time saves nine type of approach. There's a government site, floodsmart.gov, and they estimate that with 1 inch of flooding, and that's all it really takes, you're looking at flooring damage, drywall damage, you're looking at mold, you're looking at water seeping in and wicking its way through the house, could be as high as $20,000. So this is from a government site. It's all from them. And again, we're taking a page out of the playbook from generator salespeople. So this works for them. We think it'll work really well for us. The second thing with time of use, obviously, if you're in a time of use market, you understand this. This is a way to kind of do a whiteboard sketch. And the main message is here, kind of this big egg yolk in the middle is your solar production. When you make solar energy is not when you use solar energy. So the blue line is your consumption pattern throughout the day. Usually we use a little bit more in the morning and then a lot when we come home from work. Problem is that transition is right around sunset. So in the winter, it's 4 p.m. In the summer, it's a little bit later. The utility likes to charge you more when you use more. So in the late afternoon, when you're using all that energy, time of use rates go up and demand charges kick in because that's when you're going to get your demand charges on your peak usage. So at 1 minute, you've got one rate, the next minute, boom, your bill just went up. So the battery is essentially there to kind of protect you from that. So you're going to be able to transfer energy that you produced in the noontime, in the middle of the day, to later in the afternoon to offset either that demand charge and lower your total peak or offset those high rates for the time of use charge. So a little bit about StorEdge, then I'll turn it over to Cameron here in a second. All-in-one solution. So you've got one inverter on the wall. It's managing the PV. It's managing the storage. So that's unique to us. It's designed to automatically switch to backup loads and run off the battery when it needs to. It also supports on-grid applications, time of use, demand charge, all these things that we talked about. DC coupled for higher efficiency. So there are two things with this. Higher round trip efficiency. So we're converting less. So you put the energy into the battery, you take it out. It stays on the DC side when it goes into the battery. So you're not converting to AC and then back to DC and then back to AC again. So you get higher round trip efficiency. You also get clipping mitigation. So clipping happens when you've got more PV on your rooftop then your inverter can convert into AC. Now we have a battery here, a battery here, so we can take the DC from the rooftop. We might not be able to convert all of that by the inverter, so we'll just take that remainder and put it directly in the battery. It does interface and integrate directly with StorEdge monitoring, as you can kind of see here on the mock-up on the right, and it's compatible with LG Chem's Resu 10H battery. So again, main points to talk to the homeowner about. You can obviously tell them a little bit about the technology, which you saw on the previous page, but batteries are the base sale. So our recommendation, if you want to sell more storage, start with storage. Your product now is solar plus storage. That's how it comes. That's what differentiates you as a customer or as an installer. When the grid goes down, you still have power. So that's a key message to deliver to the homeowners. There's not a better time to add a battery than now. You're getting tomorrow's price today. You can explain now what that means. And batteries are how you protect your family from changing utility rates. So not only do the numbers change and go up over time, but when you get charged, whether it be a demand charge, time of use, or what, that's also changing too. So it's a shifting market from a utility point of view. Why do you want it today? You'd be crazy not to get it today. Tomorrow's price today. And again, what we said before, about $1 a day, about $1 to $2 a day. All right, our finance partners, just to kind of remind you, Spruce, Dividends, Sunlight Financial, Service Financial Company. And now I will turn it over to Cameron.
Thanks, Mike. You made a very compelling argument for like why we should buy StorEdge and just integrate it into our offering. I'm going to talk about how to install StorEdge. So again, my name is Cameron Stewart. I'm the Energy Storage Applications Engineer here at SolarEdge. Mike and I finally cut our video of how to install StorEdge. So For the purpose of this presentation, because we're running short on time, I'm going to skip a lot of the, put this wire here, put that wire there. You can see this in this video that should be launched very soon. You'll see it on our YouTube channel. Go to StorEdge.com, or you can go to YouTube. StorEdge PV is our channel name, and go to North America Training, and that's where the training, the video will be. So basic configurations, we have self-consumption and backup power. So when I talk to a lot of installers and homeowners, as our poll shows, they know backup. They know they can use batteries for backup if the grid goes down. And the much more interesting topic would be smart energy management. So we designed our system to make sure that we wanted it easy to install, just a few components with a lot of capabilities. So we can see our StorEdge inverter. It's based on the 7.6 kilowatt inverter platform. It just has a battery connection unit. So you can see that the DC disconnect is much larger because there's a lot of functionality crammed into there. Next, we have our StorEdge electricity meter. Now, this is a consumption meter, and it has two CTs that wrap around the feeders to the service entrance. What's great about this is even on non-StorEdge systems, a lot of installers are just putting this in, and it insulates them from homeowners saying, I'm not seeing the savings you said I would see. Because we can because we can measure energy at the home, we can say, oh yeah, your energy habits change when we put the PV in, and you put that hot tub in, and now we can see on January 21, that's when your hot tub went in and you started running it every day. So it just gives us that tool, that arrow in our quiver, so to speak. The auto transformer. So this is a tool that's just basically a phase balancer for when you're in backup mode. So if a refrigerator is on one side of your leg, then it doesn't drag down the voltage or the current in a window that the inverter shuts off. So when we're connected to the grid, we use the grid's auto transformers, but when we take that grid away, then we need something to do that for us. And then our battery packs. Of course, we have partnered with LG Chem. It's a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery bank. I'll let Lynn talk to that, but I think I do have some specs that we can cover briefly. So back to the StorEdge inverter. Again, it's a 7.6 kilowatt inverter. We can back up continuous for 5 kilowatts or a 6.6 kilowatt surge. So that's 10 seconds. We can have one or two batteries. The second battery is going to have a unique part number. It's a primary and secondary battery. The inverter is warranted for 12 years. And again, it's compatible with the Resu 10H. So here's the Resu 10H. Again, it's a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery bank. I'll let Lynn talk more to it. It weighs 214 pounds. It's NEMA 3R, so you can install it inside or outside. It's rated to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're in warmer climates, then absolutely it's a great idea to put this inside. And then it's pretty compact. So the power density is incredible on this. It's 36 inches wide by 29 inches long and 8 inches deep. So, and it's warranted for 10 years as well. So let's talk a little bit about self-consumption. I want you to install the components you need and not everything. So if you're just doing self-consumption or smart energy management, all you need is of course, the PV array and the power optimizers, the StorEdge inverter, a battery pack, and the smart meter. If you're not planning on doing any backup, then you do not need the auto transformer. So what the meter does is basically, again, measures current coming to and from the house so we can identify power. It helps us program the inverter and tell the inverter how to behave and how to discharge the battery pack. So excess energy is not being consumed. It's going to be stored into the battery. We can program these functionalities from the monitoring portal, the StorEdge monitoring portal. So what's easy about it is I can say within 15-minute time intervals, I want the battery to discharge to minimize my imports between the times of 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I just want to keep my battery full in case something happens for backup, whatever you decide to do. So it's a very versatile and functional tool. Basic configuration for backup. If you're not planning on doing smart energy management, if it doesn't make sense, then all you need is the inverter, the battery pack, and the auto transformer. You don't need solar in this mode, but you would have to AC charge the battery, and then that of course affects your ITC. So what I always say is this solution is great. Let's do solar, let's do inverter, let's do backup. But the coup d'etat or the cherry on top would be everything combined. So you can do one or the other or all the things. And I'm a big fan of all the things. So the auto transformer, again, is going to be a phase balancer to keep our inverter up and running. So when I talk about backup, I always get that question from the homeowner, what can I back up? I want to do my refrigerator, I want to do my air conditioner, my heater, my well pump, my sump pump, and so we have backup capabilities, absolutely yes, but it is important on setting the correct expectation, which would be you can select some loads for backup. This is not designed to be a whole home backup. So work with your homeowner and determine what they want to do. And then you basically make a sub panel and you just pull those selected loads into your sub panel. And then that's what they back up. So some examples that I did in my own home is I backed up my refrigerator. Again, to Mike's case of I want to keep that meat from spoiling. I want to drink a cold beer when the grid is out. I backed up my microwave so I can cook those frozen burritos and those Tostino pizza rolls. And then I backed up my home office. So my home office is where my modem and router live. And I want to be able to still watch Netflix on my iPhone, my tablet, my computer, and I can still do those things even during a grid outage. And then so I pulled the receptacle over, like that general lighting load, and all the receptacles in my home office are backed up. So then I can also charge those devices should I need to. If I live in California, I used to live in Arizona, so we don't have very many basements. But if you're on the East Coast, absolutely, the number one thing to back up would be a sump pump. Basements are very common, and if we can keep that basement from flooding, then that represents up to $20,000 of flood damage, based on the information that Mike gave us. So here's just kind of a load sizing example. So if I were to back up my refrigerator, its operating power isn't that much. It's only 700 watts, but what we have to be careful of is the surge, because to get that compressor running, it surges at 2200 watts, then it runs for like 5 minutes, if that's 700 watts, and then it turns off. Okay. If we're again on the East Coast and we want to back up a furnace fan, same thing, to get that furnace fan blowing, a big surge, but then its operating temperature is very low. And why that's important is because on the East Coast, typically power goes out when there's a snowstorm, right? When it's cold outside, and we want to make our home livable. Back to Arizona, if we're backing up a window AC unit, that's a small thing. We could totally back that up and make like the master bedroom a livable space if your power goes out in the middle of the summer. So we have some sources here. Feel free to check them out and basically decide with your homeowner what they want to back up. And my recommendation is a refrigerator and then maybe 1 or 2 circuits beyond that. Full visibility. So we retooled our monitoring platform to give you control over the battery. So we wanted to see what the battery is doing, so we can see, is it charging, is it discharging, how much is it, how full is it, remote access to the inverter and battery software, so we can program the battery remotely. We don't have to go to the job site for that. And easy access to the inverter during maintenance. So if you want to run a firmware upgrade or whatever. As we scroll down, we can see our power and energy flow. So again, solar energy, we can see what our solar is doing, and then our home consumption. As we scroll down, we can see our power and energy flow, our production versus consumption. So we can see the solar curve throughout the day. We can see how much energy our home has consumed. So that would be our self-consumption would be PV energy and battery energy. And then we can see how much we imported. So that's energy we purchased from the grid. So it's important to note, like in this example, let's say we are on an on-peak time between 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. This customer was able to avoid those high energy rates, that on-peak time, just by having a battery, because at 6 o'clock the sun sets and then you have no solar energy. So we were using and utilizing that extra energy in our battery. To get the inverter talking to the internet, the StorEdge inverter is now coming integrated with a cell card. So just from the factory installed, you'll be able to have a cellular card. So there's nothing you have to do. If you choose to do another option like Ethernet or Zigbee, we have those available to you. So if you wanted to wire a Ethernet cable from the inverter to the modem or router, you can absolutely do that, but I'm going to use what's provided, which is the cell card. So just lastly, let's recap before I hand it over to Lynn. Optional revenue grade data. So if you're using our finance partners, they sometimes do require revenue grade metering. We've got that integrated into the inverter. There's no extra components. Factory installed and tested, so you don't have to worry about it. The revenue grade meter is covered by the inverter warranty, so it's a 12-year warranty item. No configuration required, so it's basically what it comes down to is labor savings for installation, setup, etc. So we already did that for you, and you don't have to worry about it. Code and compliance. So I get a lot of questions about how does this meet rapid shutdown. The inverter needs to be installed within 20 feet from the battery, so no more than 20 feet away from the battery. So if we're putting the battery inside, then the inverter's got to go inside, or maybe on the opposite wall, exterior. So those are things to think about. Of course, we have arc fault protection. Of course, it's rapid shutdown. So if the inverter is inside, how is it rapid shutdown compliant? So the 2014 code and 2017 code don't say anything about energy storage systems and how that applies to rapid shutdown. But SolarEdge has it covered. Because our optimizers are on the roof, we control the rooftop voltage to less than 30 volts within 30 seconds of initiation of a rapid shutdown device. So all you have to do is turn off the DC disconnect switch of the inverter. That will turn off power to the battery, turn off power to the roof, and it's safe for firefighters. So there's no added hardware required for rapid shutdown. That's it from me. I'm going to pass the presentation off to Lynn. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cameron, and thanks everyone for spending some time with us today. My name is Lynn Tran, and I'm responsible for the successful launch of our Resu 10H battery here in North America. So I want to give some information today of why you should feel comfortable and confident in having LG Chem as one of your battery suppliers. We started out in 1947. And we specifically have been developing lithium-ion batteries for 23 years now. And this stationary storage market is just a new application for lithium batteries. And that's a lot of experience and a lot of proven technology that we're able to bring to the market. Here you'll see that our batteries are coming out of our Energy Solutions Group. 70% of our revenues is actually coming from the Basic Materials and Chemical Group. However, the large majority of LG Chem's R&D spending, 42%, is going into Energy Solutions. And what this means to me and what it should say to you is LG Chem is literally putting their money where their mouth is in terms of being able to support this industry. We also think that there's going to be a continual ramp up for storage, and we've been preparing ourselves for that. We're well positioned to be a long-term reliable partner. So with that experience comes quite a few achievements. LG Chem has supported global markets for lithium-ion batteries and across all market segments. Of particular interest are our automotive customers. We have 28 different programs, and this has resulted in over 700,000 electric vehicles on the road with 0 safety infractions. So that's significant, and that should be significant to homeowners. 700,000 electric vehicles on the road with 0 safety infractions is something to be very proud of, and I think this type of track record is something you should want out of your battery manufacturer. So LG Chem is a global company, and we manufacture globally. We are well prepared for supporting the market. We manufacture domestically, and we're building out our Nanjing plant as we speak. And what this tells you is that we are preparing ourselves to support the supply demands for lithium-ion batteries. And again, we're well aligned to be a good, reliable partner should you decide to take storage into your product offerings. So LG Chem's cell technology is where we ultimately begin to differentiate ourselves. This isn't discussed very often in the stationary storage space, but it's significant. How you manufacture your lithium-ion batteries directly relates to the safety and the performance qualities. So LG Chem uses a lamination and stacking method, and it's a nickel manganese cobalt pouch type cell. Lamination and stacking inside that pouch cell looks like a deck of cards. And even the materials in between the anode and cathode is our technology also. Again, we are a chemical company first and foremost. Typical pouch type cells, and you would be none the wiser, inside that pouch is typically wound up like a bolt of fabric. And that type of ununiform shape of the winding manufacturing method is where you can introduce cell instability in the long term. So I'll stop there and make sure that we have enough time for some Q&A.
Yeah, we've got plenty of Q&A, not as much time. But we will do our best in trying to get to as many questions as possible. There is no way we're going to get to all of them. Let me preface it by saying, yes, the slides are available. We're going to send out a survey after this to anyone who attended, so you can get the slides at the end of the survey. Also, we are going to record it. We're going to do some edits on it, make it a little bit cleaner, and then post it, make it available. If you want a recording, you can get that from our inside sales team. They'll probably have the first dibs on the recording. And so now I'll turn it over to our speakers here. Okay, well, first of all, let me do one more. There was a question about availability of StorEdge inverters, and I don't know if you heard our earnings call, but there is a shortage of some key components in inverters. So from time to time, like right now, we are seeing a little bit of a limited supply. So I would definitely get with your distributors, contact them immediately and get these orders placed, let them know your forecast, work with them as much as possible. We are working hourly with our distributors to make sure that the installers with projects are getting product as soon as possible. But with no delay, definitely contact and put in your orders. All right. So a couple questions on backup. And so Cameron, for you on the backup, if the inverter, well, let's say if the power goes out of the battery, does it have the capability to recharge the battery?
Yeah, so the way the storage inverter and works during backup mode, we will run the selected loads on PV power. And then any excess PV power that's not being consumed will charge the battery. So once the sun goes down, then we're exclusively on battery. And so if you drain your battery before the end of the night, then you're out of power. So that's why it's important to select a few things and not overload your backup capabilities. It's always better to do less than more in this case.
And in that same idea, are you limited to 120 volt loads?
No, so that's what the auto transformer does. You can do a 120 240. So it's a 240 volt output is what our inverter is, and we need the auto transformer to split that phase into a 120 240. So you can do a 240 two-pole breaker as a backup breaker.
And is this something that you could use for off-grid?
That's a tough question. So no, the product is not designed for off-grid. There's a key step in the installation process that we call activation. So to activate the inverter, you need a sine wave. You need the AC source. That being said, there's a lot of work being done in Puerto Rico right now trying to get the grid back up and ready. And of course, there's still a lot of people without power that are installing StorEdge inverters with LG Chem batteries. And we have found ways to make this work using other products. So if you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out and we can take them as they come. I might have a white paper coming out soon about it.
If they do not have the auto transformer and the customer loses power, but he does have a battery, do they get backup power in that situation? How does that work?
If they do not have an auto transformer and they lose power, you run the risk of basically of the inverter shutting off because the voltage is out of frequency, or excuse me, out of range. So I would advise you to go back to site and say, oh, I've got this thing for you, and and put that in.
Awesome. A couple questions on the meter. Does the meter replace the PV meter, the meter that measures the PV signal?
Got it. So the PV meter typically is a utility requirement. They want to know how much PV energy is being produced. So in some places like Connecticut, we can auto report that information using our revenue grade meter. But the SolarEdge electricity meter that I was describing does not replace that. It is measuring consumption, and it is measuring import and export to and from the home.
Okay. And on the backup, kind of going back to that, do you require a separate loads panel, a backed up loads panel?
Yeah, so that's one way to do it as a backed up loads panel. It's not required that way, but you do have to isolate those loads. So there's an output from the inverter to a backed up loads whatever. Some installers are choosing just to do a 4-gang outlet underneath the inverter. It's a very low cost solution, and they say, okay, here's your protected loads. I'm a big fan of doing a load center, like a sub panel, and the reason for that is I don't want my homeowner to have to come outside doing a grid outage and plug stuff in. I want that to be automatic. So that's why I recommend using a sub panel.
And there is one in here. Can they combine, Lynn, this will be for you. Can they combine 2 batteries to increase the amount of backup power they have?
Very good question. So we will be launching our Resu 10H secondary battery, and this enables to have, it's a twin of the primary Resu 10H, and this will enable 2 batteries to a single SolarEdge inverter. These will first hit US early April and are available through several distributors here in North America.
Awesome, great. And I guess since you're up, do you guys have any projections on where you see the market going in the future?
We see 2018 as a very high growth year. The expectation here in the U.S. is will be significant, particularly for the residential markets. It's a growing industry, and feedback thus far that I've had with installers, StorEdge has increased their solar sales, and in some cases surpassed their expectations. So hoping that all installers have this type of experience and using the LG Chem battery products.
Thank you for that. Cameron, this one's about a sump pump. Do you know, like on average, the load of a sump pump and how long that could run?
Yeah, so your experience may vary. So typically, a 0.5 horsepower sump pump is going to draw about 2,000 to 3,000 watts on startup. If you get to a bigger sump pump, of course, it's going to draw more. But then there's like these variable speed motor sump pumps that use, instead of being a 1/2 horsepower pump, they use like 2/4 horsepower pumps, and it decreases the amount of inrush current. So just look at the sump pump manufacturer and go from there.
Thank you. And now with a cell modem, do all of them come with a cell modem now, or can they order it without the cell modem?
My understanding, and I guess I need to get a little clarification on this, my understanding is they all come with the cell modem factory installed. Of course, you can take that cell modem out and use it in a different product should you choose to do that. But I can double check to see if you can get it without. My assumption is no, that you cannot. Monitoring is so critically important for this inverter and battery.
So this one's kind of interesting. Let's say they have an RMA and they're removing the inverter for an RMA. Do they have to unwire the backup loads panel and rewire anything?
That's a great question. So if you're removing the inverter for an RMA, all you have to do is leave the DC disconnect and the battery connection unit on the wall. Inside the battery connection unit, there's a bypass switch. So you flip this switch to 2 so you can bypass the inverter and still power your backed up loads panel. But when you're doing the work, flip the switch to 0, and then you can easily and safely remove just the inverter cabinet and then put the new inverter cabinet back and send the old one back to us.
And Cameron, I'll follow that. If you're working on the SolarEdge inverter side, do be sure that you properly power down the resu battery to avoid drainage. If you're not going to commission the battery or it's going to remain idle, you need to shut off the circuit breaker and then shut off the auxiliary switch. Just keep that in mind.
That's a great point. This is regarding the meter, talking about CTs. People are having trouble getting the CTs to fit.
Yeah, so the CTs are always a pain point. Whenever I talk to installers, that's the number one complaint, the number one headache. Installing CTs is never easy. So SolarEdge recommends a split core CT, and in many cases, this does work. You can get it around the feeders of the service entrance, but sometimes service entrance have bus bars, or sometimes they're center fed and they've got 4 wires instead of 2 wires to the main breaker. So we have one of the application notes that we posted on the webinar that you can download is called alternate current transformers. And so you can see our list of approved CTs that we have tested with. And some of them are like Rogowski coils, which is basically a cable CT that makes it a lot easier. The moral of the story is feel free to use a CT, whatever CT you want that has a 0.333 volt output. The caveat being, if it's not on our list, then we can't guarantee the accuracy of it.
All right, thanks. Now, there are a lot of questions in here, application-specific questions. And so I think one of the things to advise there is get in touch with our inside sales team. They can walk you through some of them. And for things that they can't solve, they'll bring in Cameron to help out, or one of our other applications engineers. So, obviously it's really difficult to get into these kind of application-specific questions here. If you need help with approvals, with utilities, getting your paperwork filed, contact our inside sales team. That's what they're there for, and they can help walk you through that. And then they'll bring in the experts as needed. So just kind of a public service announcement, I guess, for that. Now on the 7600, there's a question here. It looks like the home needs a 200 amp service to support that.
Oh yeah, so the 7600 is designed for a 200 amp service because the backfeeding breaker is 40 amps. SolarEdge is now launching a 3800 StorEdge inverter. So it'd still be a 20 amp backfeeding breaker, but here's the awesome part about it. When it is in backup mode, it acts just like the 7600. So you still get your 6.6 kilowatts of discharge for 10 seconds and your 5 kilowatts discharge continuous. So for all the AC output stuff on backfeeding to the grid, it looks like a 3800, but all the backup stuff, it looks like a 7600. So that'll be available soon.
This is a question about setting up the profiles for something like time of use. Do they just not have access to battery backup then?
No, you can run multiple profiles. So if you're doing a time of use arbitrage and you're running your battery through specific times of day, you can still also do backup as the offering. So you can run those things simultaneously. And what some installers choose to do is they set a backup reserve. So they can say, I want to cycle my battery 75% of the battery life, so 75% of the energy, and I want to reserve 25% of the energy. So if the grid goes out, I can run my battery on this 25%. I always have this little chunk that if the grid goes out, I can still power my loads.
This is a question about charging the batteries from the grid. Is it okay to charge the batteries from the grid when and when not?
That's an interesting question. So you can charge the batteries from the grid. We do enable that. Some utilities don't allow you to do that. The ITC, I think, maybe takes part of your incentive away if you AC charge, depending on how much you AC charge from the grid. So it's really up to you to make that call. If you want to charge, if you don't want to charge, does it make fiscal sense? We give you the ability to do it.
Yeah, and definitely for anything tax related, contact your tax advisors on that. Yeah. They're the ultimate authority on that. This is regarding rapid shutdown. So how does the system work with regard to rapid shutdown?
So if rapid shutdown is initiated, that would be the DC disconnect. So if you turn off that DC disconnect, it turns off the battery, it turns off the inverter, and it brings the safety voltage from the optimizers to operating voltage to 1 volt per optimizer. So we meet all rapid shutdown requirements. The 2017 code wants this contingent upon an AC disconnect. So or it just says PV system disconnect, which again is our radial switch, our DC disconnect on the inverter. So we meet all rapid shutdown requirements.
And this is maybe more about programming, but let's say the batteries are full, you're still producing energy, your home consumption needs are met. Does the energy then go to the grid?
I'm sorry, say again?
So you're still producing energy from the PV array, and the batteries are full, and they don't have any additional need in the home.
Got it.
Can the energy then go to the grid?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two modes of operation. If you're in Hawaii, we're not allowed to export to the grid, and that may be changing soon, I'm to understand. So if you're in Hawaii, then no, the inverter will power curtail and will prevent, if the battery is full, your home loads are not enough to consume all your solar energy, then that inverter will power curtail and will not send that excess energy to the grid. If you are not in Hawaii and you're in the mainland US and we still have net metering, then yes, if the battery is full, any excess PV will then be exported to the grid.
And Lynn, this is maybe for you. Are there any sales tools like a mock battery system or little demos that you guys provide?
Yes, we do. You can buy dummy units through distribution. It's the same type of chassis and parts of a main production unit, just minus the lithium cells. So those are available through distribution, and several here in North America.
And another one from Canada looking to get access to the LG Chem batteries. What would they do? How would they go about that?
Reach out to me and I'll provide you a list of our distributors. I always urge installers to be sure that they're buying the resu from an authorized distributor. It's the only way that I can ensure that the right information is reaching you. So reach out to me and I can provide you that list.
Cameron, regarding the cell card, how does the data service work? Is that just free?
Yeah, so the cell card is the cost of the cell card and the data plan is integrated into the cost of StorEdge. So there's nothing you have to do. You just got to put it on the wall and turn on the inverter and it starts communicating. Oh yeah. It's going to come with a 5-year data plan. I believe it. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a 5-year data plan. It uploads the data every 4 hours into 15-minute intervals.
Awesome. There's a question on here regarding a demo app that salespeople could use to sell in the home. So we do have a demo account. And so if you don't have a SolarEdge monitoring account, you can download our app. On the bottom, you can click, I think it's demo sites or demo account. You click that and you'll have a list of sites. A couple of those do have batteries. A couple of those have consumption meters. And those are great tools to give the homeowner an example of what their experience is going to be like when they own a battery. And then they can actually download the app themselves, and without establishing an account, they can look at the same site. So it's a good sales tool, and that is available on iTunes or Google Play. This is a question about wiring in the second battery. How would that happen? Is it, I don't know, parallel serial? What are the combiner box?
To use the primary and secondary battery together, there's a simple off-the-shelf combiner box, and effectively the secondary battery is wired in between the primary and the inverter. This is simple installation.
Yeah, so you're just paralleling the two batteries. One way that I've done it for the communications wiring that I found it a little bit easier to do is for the 4 COM wires, you're going to crimp on a ferrule and parallel them in either the primary or secondary battery. For the DC inputs, a Polaris lug works, so you could just use a NEMA 3R junction box and parallel those 2 connections for the DC outputs of the battery in a Polaris lug. It's up to you, or this combiner box.
And additionally, the secondary battery can be installed after the primary battery has already been in operation. So it was designed to be able to come back to your existing customers and be able to add the secondary on there.
This is a question about, there's a 20-foot limitation maybe you covered between the battery and the inverter. Can you explain what the basis for that is?
Yeah, so the 20-foot limitation comes from, I don't want the inverter more than 20 feet away from the battery, and it comes from a couple of things. Mostly it's communications, and to be able to operate the battery in the way we want it to behave, we have to have the inverter within 20 feet.
How is the battery firmware upgraded?
Battery firmware is upgraded through the StorEdge inverter. So you're just going to use your micro SD card. You can go to, I believe, just Google search StorEdge firmware. So STOREDGE firmware. And the number one result goes to SolarEdge's website where you can download the latest firmware version, which I believe right now is 3.2191. And you're just going to put that on a micro SD card, that firmware version. It's a BSUF file. And you take that micro SD card and put it inside your inverter, and then we'll upgrade firmware to the battery. So you got to make sure the DC switch is on and make sure the battery breaker and auxiliary switch is on during this upgrade process. And then once that's complete, make sure that you double check the programming of the inverter that you are talking to an LG Chem battery, and then you're done. So that's how we do it. It's pretty simple and straightforward.
What lithium ion chemistry is used in the battery? Lynn, this is definitely for you.
We use a nickel manganese cobalt chemistry, and remember we use a pouch type cell, and the cell itself is very thin with very large surface areas, and it's great for heat dissipation. With our nickel manganese cobalt technology, you'll see that the residue doesn't have any liquid cooling or fans. It's just natural air convection because fundamentally we have the good heat dissipation on the cell level.
And are there any any operational considerations, minimum state of charge, or things like that they should take into consideration?
Actually, this might be a better.
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. So the depth of discharge for the LG Chem battery is 95%. So they say your 9.8 kilowatt hour battery can go all the way down to 95%, which is 9.3 kilowatt hours. SolarEdge gives you a 9% buffer on this, just in case, right? And so if you're looking at the monitoring portal, you'll see the battery energy drain to about 14%. Once it hits 14, it'll stop discharging. And then beyond that, you'll see maybe a little parasitic discharge. If it hits 12%, the StorEdge inverter will AC charge the battery just to protect the battery back up to 14%.
Is the system compatible with 208 volt?
Is the system compatible with a 208 volts?
Single phase.
Yeah, so single phase, typically our 5K and our 10 kilowatt single phase inverters can be converted to a 208. I would have to double check. I don't believe it is because, and then your backed up loads would be kind of weird too. I would have to double check that. I don't know the answer. That's a good question. Good job, whoever asked that.
Somebody's asking, what is RGM?
Oh, RGM stands for revenue grade meter, and it's just an accuracy level. So ANSI, I think, .2 requires a 0.5% accuracy. And the thought is, if you're being billed or charged for this energy, you better be accurate. So it just increases the accuracy of the production that we're measuring.
And Lynn, this question is about a test required to purchase or certification required to purchase for the batteries.
That's a very good question. The only requirement for working with the LG Chem Resu is we have a very simple installer's certification test. It's online, and I host weekly webinars every Thursday, 12 to 1 Pacific time, and you literally can get certified within the hour. So it's a very simple test. It's our only requirement, and you need it in place so that when you install the Resu, that the warranties are in play.
Somebody's asking, what does ITC stand for? So in this case, it's investment tax credit. There is another ITC acronym out there now with a 201K, so I understand that could be confusing. But the way we're meaning it right now is investment tax credit. That's the 30% that you get on the solar, and if you're charging the battery from solar, also on the battery. So we're coming up here a little bit after the hour. Let me see if we've got any questions here. A couple more we'll close out in just a minute, but Lynn, maybe you could talk about how many times can the battery cycle? Is it like a daily cycle or weekly cycle? How's it designed?
It's designed with its warranty. We assumed a full depth of discharge cycle every day for 10 years. And with that, our warranty has 22.4 megawatt hours of energy throughput. And counting by cycles with batteries is a little bit foggy. The information that people are wanting to get is how much am I going to get for my battery, and that's more accurately represented with energy throughput. So again, that's 22.4 megawatt hours by 10 years.
All right, and again, we have so many questions here. So I wish we had time to get to everything. We're kind of coming up on the hour. We definitely want to let you guys get back to selling in the market. If we didn't get to your question, here's what we're going to try and do. We're going to get your information and your questions to our inside sales team. So we'll have them try and call you in the next couple of weeks. Might take us a little bit of time to process through this, but we definitely want to have these conversations ongoing with you. Or you can just call us directly and ask our inside sales team any of these questions. If they don't know, they'll bring in experts like Cameron. But yeah, thank you for joining us. A record webinar for us, so
Nice.
this is all very good. And Cameron, thanks for joining us today. Lynn?
Thank you.
Thank you. Super
Good
happy
job,
to be
guys.
here.
All right. So again, thank you very much and have a good weekend. And join us again for future webinars from StorEdge.